Hey, how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Yes, I'm here live with Chuck Dixon, the comic book writer with too many credits to mention. So let's just say this guy wrote a lot of freaking comic books in his day. So Chuck, thank you for coming back. You were one of the first people to come on my channel, and man, I think I spent half an hour just staring at the screen. Can't believe I was talking to you.
I had a good time, so I wanted to come back.
Oh, thank you so much. One thing I wanted to mention is every Wednesday you do a YouTube video called Ask Chuck Dixon,
right?
And I submit questions a lot. And 2 weeks ago, you did I got a twin spin, so it means you did two of my questions, and you said my buddy John. So if I'm your buddy and you wrote Batman, that means I'm kind of Robin.
There you go.
And from now on, I'm whenever anybody comes on, I'm saying I'm Chuck Dixon's buddy. That's going to be I'm going to put that on my gravestone.
I have to get yourself a pair of pixie boots.
There you go. I'm gonna work into work, shake people's hand. Hi, I'm John. I'm Chuck Dixon's buddy. I'm Chuck So, how's it going? What's been going on since last I talked to you?
I just got back from Sarasota. I drove down there to CGC, the grading people. Graham Nolan sent me a whole bunch of Joe Frankenstein's to sign, and
that was a great comic.
I'm just going to drive them down there instead of mailing them. So I'm only an hour away, so that was a cool day. But
that's cool. You know, first off, I don't know. I people get mad at me when I say this, but I don't CGC comics because I like comics, but I understand why people do it. But I don't want to mail them. Like every once in a while, they come up to New York, and I'm thinking that's the only way I would actually do, because I don't trust the mail system to put my Fantastic Four #1 in the mail.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know,
and then sweat bullets till it gets back. Yeah.
Yeah, like 6 months later, where's my comic? Where's my comic? You know, I don't know. My cousin was telling me that the new thing now is they iron their comics, and you know, have you ever heard anything about that?
I don't really get on the collectible end of it that much. I just want to read them.
Right. Yeah.
I'm never into what condition they're in or any. I mean, once they started reprinting everything on better paper, I sold all my old comics. I mean,
well, I still have all my old comics. I have some of the first comics I ever bought. If I don't have them anymore, it's because one of my boxes of comics got stolen by I don't know who. All my John Byrne X-Men. John Byrne X-Men and Spidey Super Stories. I wonder if so I'm pretty sure they were trying to steal the X-Men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I broke open my CGC of Avengers #4 because I didn't mean to buy a CGC, and I wanted it for my collection. I was like, I gotta read this. So
yeah,
I should have videotaped it. That would have given people heart attacks. I was, before we went live, I was mentioning that every Wednesday Chuck does Ask Chuck Dixon on YouTube. So that's a channel. Check that out. I love it because that's what I listen to on my commute to work every Wednesday. I love listening to that. And I do a lot of commercials for it. But I always call that, instead of saying Ask Chuck Dixon, I call that John's going to spend at least $25 this week. You always recommend something. So this was from a couple of weeks ago. This was excellent.
Okay.
Yep. I had to get that. And then this was this week's.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Drew Geraci got me to spend money on that one because I never heard of it.
Yeah. For those, it's Don Simpson's talking about why 1963 never was finished. I can't wait to read this. I just got this today.
It's a weird book, but I loved it.
Yeah. I love that inside baseball with guys like Alan Moore and everything.
Yeah.
So you got a new Conan novel coming out.
It is out.
Oh, it is out.
Amazon. Yeah, it's on Amazon.
Okay. So. I forget. The first one is Siege at the Citadel.
The Siege of the Black Citadel. This one is Caravan of the Damned.
And you got a third one in the works.
Yeah, it's called the Pit of the Blind God. I finished writing it months ago. It'll be out probably in January.
I forget if I asked you. I bought 2 of your Sidewinder novels. What order do I read them?
It really doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
It really doesn't matter. Probably want to read Snakehand first.
Okay, Snakehand first. Okay.
It really doesn't matter. and I'm writing I'm like halfway through a third one. I just can't get back to it because people keep offering me comic book jobs. So.
Yeah. I remember I was like, you said that they were, your original publisher said they were too violent, and they
yes.
I was like, all right, I got to get this book.
Yeah, they were horrified by Snake Eyes, and I didn't even. I don't think I submitted Lagrangia to them because that really would have freaked them out. I don't know. This is the same publisher that does my Levon Cades, and it's like, why did these bother you and Levon Cade doesn't?
I don't know. You need a what are that? The magic 8-ball to figure out some of the decisions business people make sometimes.
Well, I think in defense of the publisher, they're trying to create a line of westerns that were more PG-13. So I understood why they didn't want this to be in the mix.
Okay. So. We got a question for you, Tony Grigo. What's your opinion on Tom Hardy's Bane, particularly the voice that he used?
Yeah, where'd that voice come from? What was it? Some like Serbian wrestler or something? Yeah, that was a weird one. It's kind of, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, they didn't get a big guy, although Tom Hardy did a great job. He acted big. But
he had a big presence. I guess that's all that matters.
Yeah, he was a good presence, and delivery was good, and body language. Because he didn't have much to work with. He only had half his face to work with. That's a tough one.
Right. But, a lot of actors wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get a lot of decisions, but at least they showed him as a mastermind. They showed him as a smart guy. So that was good.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I can't even talk. Lately, there's been like a lot of like Mark Millar's been saying we got to save comics. The way to save comics is get these old school classic fan beloved writers and artists back. And you said you wouldn't take the pay cut to work for DC. Has anybody been reaching out that you know of? I mean, not you to anybody. I'm sure
no, it really isn't, unless everybody's keeping quiet about it, which I can't feature. No, they're not really. They're not reaching out, and I don't know. I don't know how many guys would go back, and then you've got to trust the current crop of editors to even know who's good and who's not.
Yeah, I don't even recognize any of these names anymore. It's like I pretty much stopped with cold turkey with Marvel and DC around 2015. And then every once in a while, I'll just flip through a comic. I don't recognize any of the editors. Once in a while, I'll recognize an artist, but I don't recognize the writers anymore either. Jeez.
Well, it's like the only guy working that I see every once in a while is Dan Jurgens. He's like the only guy, the only mainstay, the only what I consider, great talent.
Yeah, he
is on the writing end. I mean, Dan's awesome.
He can do it all. He's an artist. He could do it all.
Yeah, Dan's a terrific comic creator. He seems to be the only one they keep around. But I got to think that even if they brought all those guys back, how do you get readers to even know what happened or to trust it again? I mean, how many times have they rebooted things over and over and over again, and we've learned to not trust them?
Right.
And then if you ever say, well, we're going to bring back all these great creators, you couldn't trust them to keep them around for a long time.
Yeah. I don't. They lost my trust. I forget who I was talking to the other day, and I said it's like you break up with a girlfriend for a reason, and going back with that girlfriend's a mistake. Most of the time you don't. So would I go back to DC? I don't know. It's like trust me once, or whatever the expression is. Fool me once. So I don't know. I think they irreversibly hurt themselves, Marvel and DC.
Yeah, I think that more and more, I'm of the opinion that they need to come up with a big event to get readers back, and that event has to be really, really good. It has to satisfy so that you go, okay, they're serious now. And I use the example. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I use the example of Spider-Man versus Superman in the 70s.
Yeah, we were talking about
Marvel and DC were in trouble, and they used that project to bring readers back, bring in new readers, and they made it a good project.
Right.
I don't know if Marvel or DC are capable. I know they're not. They're not capable of that anymore.
Not right now.
No.
Not right now. Again, I keep bringing up Mark Millar, but he seems to be the only reasonable important voice in mainstream comics right now that seems to be talking sense, and he's uncancelable because the guy's selling. And he said, he goes, just you got to have good stories. And Mike Barron said the same thing. You got to have good stories, And I look back at the past 10 years, and I can't think what are the big stories. From a little kid, I'm still talking about the Great Darkness Saga with the Legion of Superheroes. I'm still talking about the Death of Phoenix. I'm talking about like when Galactus fought the Sphinx and the Fantastic Four. You know what I mean? I get giddy like a little kid.
Right.
We're talking about Batman when Bane breaks Batman's back. We get excited when I talk to other comic fans. I'm in my 50s. We turn back into kids again. We talk about these things, and then we kind of like, and then it just ended. But
I mean, don't ever get Graham and I started on the Mangog saga. I mean, we turned into gibbering idiots.
How did I not mention that?
Yeah, we just turned into enormous fanboys when we talk about Mangog, and they just they don't know how to do it. I don't even think they want to do it. I think they wanted to ruin comics for some reason.
At first I argued with people like, no, why would they want to ruin? They just don't know what to. And now I think you're kind of right. They kind of did it on purpose, and they make no bones about it. You would talk about Mangog. You just reminded me. I was a little kid reading that, sitting in the barber's chair. He had a comic book on thing, and I didn't move.
Right.
And I remember the barber saying to my mom, "Man, this kid really likes comics."
He really likes this comic.
Yeah, I was like, "Oh my god," and that was before I really read comics. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that was just, I didn't realize how old and precious that comic was sitting in the comic shop.
Yeah.
That run of Thor is
oh yeah, it's fantastic. It's amazing stuff.
I don't know if I asked you. I think I might have, but what is a property or comic that you would have loved to have write that you've never got the chance to write?
Well, my stock answer is that Graham and I always wanted to do like at least a year or two run on Fantastic Four.
Oh my god,
just go nuts.
Another
one is Commandi.
Yeah, I heard you talk about Commandi before. Yeah, that would have been fun.
Because I presented it as an all ages book, like young adult book, and they said, "What would you change?" And I said, "Well, nothing."
Nothing.
What's the hook? I said, "He's the last boy on Earth." I mean, what other hook do you need? He talks to animals.
He talks to animals. There's a tiger guy. There's monkey man. What else do you want?
I said, this would appeal to boys, young boys, and it would appeal to tweeny girls. It's got a cute guy who talks to animals. I mean.
Right.
There's nothing wrong. I said, the only thing I would change is Kirby created the series over a weekend. And I said that he rushed his intro. The introduction of how Commandi makes it to the surface and everything else is just under dramatized. I would spend a little more time on that. I said, but otherwise I would change nothing. I wouldn't change any of the characters or situations or relationships. I mean, it's awesome. It's
like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon in a comic.
Yeah, except there's a lot more thought to it. Yeah, I should warn Hanna-Barbera fans now. This week's episode of Ask Chuck Dixon might get a little rough.
Oh, okay. I have no insider information, people.
The title of it is "What's Wrong with Johnny Quest," and I kind of go into it. So.
It's funny because I grew up loving Johnny Quest, and I bought the complete DVD, and I watched it, and I'm like, this is kind of dull.
That's what I felt when I was 10.
Oh. Oh man, I couldn't even imagine you and Graham's Fantastic Four.
We already know what our first story would be, which I won't tell you because they'll steal it.
Yeah, they probably will. But both of you guys are, first off, you both love comics, and second, you have encyclopedic knowledge of comics. This would have been awesome.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going on over at Marvel right now, but Reed Richards, Ben Grimm is my favorite superhero of all time. There's something about Ben Grimm that I love. And believe it or not, Reed Richards is my second favorite. I just loved Reed Richards.
Right.
That's who he was. Cool. He was smart. Stretching I didn't particularly care about, but he was cool and he was smart, and he led the Fantastic Four through space, and even Galactus respected him. And now they're making him like the bad father, really doing them dirty in Marvel, and I almost take that personally. You know, what is with you Marvel guys and you don't like dads?
Well, I think you nailed it. You said Graham and I love comics. That's the difference. These people don't love comics. It's like the people making movies now don't love movies, and the people making comics don't love comics.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference. You've got to love comics to work in them and do it right. I mean, you've got to be totally lifelong dedicated. You can't just drop in and do comics for a few years and leave. You know.
Yeah, I'm looking at all the stuff behind you. You got Big Barter, you got a Marvel calendar. You know, looking at my stuff. You got two geeks right over here.
Oh, absolutely.
If we could take this blue line separating us and we were in the same room, it wouldn't even be a surprise.
No, absolutely. We're just sitting across the table from each other.
Pretending.
Yeah, I'm not really in Florida.
Yeah.
I'm in John's house.
I'll roll up a piece of paper and you'll see it hit Chuck in the head. Yeah, oh man, and and people get so mad when you suggest something like, oh yeah, maybe we should respect the medium, or if Jack Kirby created a character like this, we should leave it like this. And oh my God, like I used to argue with people, and now I don't even have because these people they don't even care. They don't want to. It's like this is no you're a Nazi or you're whatever istophobe because Reed Richards is a bad father. It's like no, he's not. He was the coolest guy in the world. You know, people forget in the 60s, like scientists and archaeologists, they were cool. Like he's like Indiana Jones even before he had powers. But what they I don't know. People at Marvel.
I mean, Reed Richards created an era when we were saying we were going to go to the moon,
right?
Crazy stuff. We were seeing the effect of science in our lives. We don't even see the effect of science in our lives anymore. All we see is the effect of technology, which grew out of the science.
That's a good point. Wow.
We don't have the future we were promised. We were promised flying cars and moving sidewalks. And what do we got? You can look at kitty cat videos on your phone. I mean, that's the future.
Yeah, I know. I was just saying this the other day, like right here, this thing in I have the sum total of all human knowledge. I could listen to any song by any artist of any time period. I have more access to information than ever. And what do? I'm arguing with people on Twitter about the new Dungeons and Dragons movie, and I'm just as bad as everybody else.
No, we're all drawn into it. We've all got our mother box, and
yes,
it tells us how to get places and remembers stuff for us.
If you can only teleport me to work, then when I was a kid, we all made up superheroes. I made up the leader of my super team was called Data Man, and Data Man basically had a cell phone. He was just a scientist with the cell phone, and they would encounter like a wall, and he would be like, okay, titanium wall, it's 2 feet thick. We need to use a laser of this magnitude and blah, blah, blah. And I think of it the other day, like I was a kid and my superhero was a guy with a cell phone. And now I'm that guy with the cell phone when I'm arguing about the new Dungeons & Dragons movie with some idiot that I'm never going to meet before. How the mighty have fallen. So Tony again is asking, are there going to be any reprints of Airboy? Airboy is where I discovered.
Yeah, I'm dealing with somebody now. We're going to do new reprints. We're going to basically restore it. I mean, IDW did a good job with the telephone books, but they didn't do anything to really recolor or restore. They scan the comics, but they're scanning the comics and they're scanning the comics, and they didn't take as much care as I wish they had. So I'm talking with somebody now about hardcover omnibuses of the Airboy stuff. Oh,
okay. Speaking of Airboy, you said a few times that Skywolf you modeled after your father.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said your dad was a pilot or a bomber, right?
Well, he was a bombardier on a B-17, which, if you know anything about B-17s, when they were over the target, he was the pilot of the plane. He wasn't in charge of the plane.
Yeah.
Once they reached the aiming point. He was he could do all that. High school dropout, but he could do all that. And in fact, my dad won a Distinguished Service Cross because he suggested changes to the Norden bomb sight, mechanical changes that made it more accurate.
Oh, cool.
And again, high school he dropped out of school at 13. but he was a mechanical genius.
Yeah.
So, but he was from West Virginia, and he had a real frank way of talking. And everything Skywolf says, something my dad would have said or did say.
Yeah, I got to reread Airwolf. I mean, I got to reread Airboy, knowing that's so cool. So my question was going to be, who's your self-insert character?
The Punisher. The Punisher speaks for me.
The Punisher. Yeah, I know. I work at the airport, and I get off the air train to get to work, and everybody's just slow walking. I just wish I could just turn into Frank Castle. Get out of my way, you slow walkers! I got to get to the coffee truck before the iron workers. They take forever.
That negative male stereotype of just not giving a damn what anybody thinks. Only my wishes are important here.
I think you said that superheroes are child's and adolescent power fantasies, but the Punisher is an adult power fantasy. I think that's so true.
Absolutely. Him and Conan, they are adult wish fulfillment figures.
Oh, what is it about Conan that is so lasting? Because I remember as a kid, I thought he was bland, but now I can't get enough of him.
Well, I mean, correctly written, there's a lot of nuance there. Yeah, he's a barbarian, but he's not stupid, and he also has like a really wicked sense of humor. And then he's even funnier when he's trying not to be funny. He's just, again, like Frank Castle, he's a very direct guy, but he's a guy who was like, he's a lot smarter than people give him credit for, and you are at your peril if you underestimate his intelligence, despite the fact that he's a brute, and a womanizer and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of the first story. The first Conan story, I remember one of the advisors said to him, this is all just an illusion. Life is just an illusion. And Conan says, well, if it's an illusion, then I too am also an illusion. So it's real to me. So I'm going to treat it as if it's real. And the advisor looked back at him and was just like, all right, he stumped me. That's when I realized he's not just a dumb brute. I back in college, life is an illusion, man. It doesn't all matter. Well, a wise man named Conan once. Conan Doyle? No, Conan the Barbarian.
Conan the Barbarian.
What is it? Reed was Doc Savage. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Reed, he was. Yeah, I mean, he was. He was that science figure, that guy, that egghead.
Right.
We were all counting on to figure the future out for us.
Yeah, we were all hoping that the scientists were going to let us beat those Ruskies to the moon.
Exactly, man. That was an important thing. I mean, I remember as a kid, I knew all the astronauts' names. I followed that stuff, religiously.
Yeah, I've been a fan of yours since we led back in the 80s, especially Airboy and Alien Region. Thanks for me. Oh, yeah, you go. People just thanking you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny, and this is going to sound stalkerish, but like after years and years and years of reading a writer or admiring them, you kind of feel like you're friends with them, and then you like you say hello to them on Twitter and like, I gotta go, and you're like, we were friends.
yeah. I mean, when I would approach editors, whose books I liked. Because I thought, well, if you're editing a book and I don't like it, we probably don't have anything in common. So I would always approach Larry Hama, Archie Goodwin, guys who were doing books I really liked. And I did have a rapport with them. We liked the same stuff. So,
I was talking with Renee. She does a comic called Fiendish, and Strachowski. I was hesitant to say her name because I always say it wrong, and she was telling me that when she was in art school, he would get harsh criticisms. I can't remember the guy's name that was just like, no, that's terrible. Do it again. And like you hold it back tears and just like, oh, okay. And she said she's so thankful for the blunt, harsh criticism.
Oh, no. I talk to people, and they'll have me read a story or a synopsis or whatever. And, yeah, this is really good. It's really strong. Do you mean it? Well, how unfair would it be to you if I said I didn't mean it? If I didn't mean it, if I'm just glad handing you, But if I see something wrong, I'll say, look, this doesn't work for me. My good buddy Drew Geraci, he came up with this superhero. He wanted to write a superhero comic. And in the superhero comic, these superheroes, they had like a band. They were playing in clubs, right? And I read the first script and I said, the superhero part sucks. I said, but the band stuff is fascinating. I said, you really want to write about a rock band. You really don't want to write superheroes. And he wrote 3 novels called, about the Demands, about a rock band, indie rock band.
That's cool.
Pittsburgh. Because they said, I realize you're not that into the, you love comics and you think you want to write a superhero comic, but you really don't. So
that's funny. So
but you have to be, and I mean, he was a friend. It'd be unfair to say, oh, it's all wonderful, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and then he spends all his time writing his stuff that doesn't sell. Yeah,
I mentioned Larry Hama. Larry Hama was brutal.
Yeah, that's why I was bringing this up. You said he told you just to get rid of something, and just don't.
He would burn you to the ground. And then you had to come back. You had to come back at him. If he didn't come back, he had no use for you. He thought, hey, you fold under criticism, you're gonna fold under deadline pressure too. And I can't use you. He told Lee Weeks on the phone. Lee Weeks called and said, I want to come in and show you my portfolio. And Larry said, don't bother, you suck. And Lee said, what, do you see my work? He goes, no, I can tell talking to you on the phone, you suck. And Lee told me this story, and he says, I never went to see him. I said, that was your biggest mistake. I said, he would have hired you if you'd gone in and shown him your portfolio. If you'd said, F you, Larry, you're going to look at my portfolio, damn it. He would have hired you because you were good.
I'm thinking of that scene in Fight Club when Meatloaf is outside the door, and he tells him to leave, and he starts leaving. He goes, no, you're supposed to stay in here and impress me. And then
Yeah, he said there was another artist I knew. He said, do you know what the word awful means?
I heard horror stories of Frank Miller. Guy's a living legend. He brought his stuff to Marvel, and they did the same thing that they did to what's his name, Rupert Pupkin in the King of Comedy. Yeah, here's the door. Come call me when you're working. Frank Miller.
Well, they would do a lot of that. I went up plenty of times and got the bum's rush. If I was lucky enough to even get in, get past the receptionist. I don't know if I've told you on this show, but in the 70s, DC would have a freelance day where you would go up and they would interview you in a group in a conference room.
Oh,
you had to get there like around 11:30, and they would take you to this conference room and just tell you that there's no work for any of you. Go get a real job.
I remember I moved back to New York. I couldn't afford to be a teacher in California with what the rent was. So I moved back to New York to become a teacher. That's what I went to school for. And they had an open fair. And I drove there. And, my father says, don't come back without a job, So I'm at the school fair, and I'm all nervous. I got my student tie on and everything, clean shaven at that point, believe it or not. And he looked like Grandpa Munster. I'm on his line. And then he's just like, okay, I got to go. And it was till 2:00, and it was 1:45. And I said, where you going? And he looked at me. I said, it says 2:00. I still got 15 minutes. And he went, and he slowly sat down. He was the principal of some school. And I said, you're going to hear my interview. And he went, do you think you could control a class? I said, I got you to sit down and listen to me. And he said, you're hired. That's how I got my first teaching job.
Oh, man. Well, that's what you got to do,
Yeah, you're not going to come home and argue with my Italian dad that I didn't get a job. No way.
No.
I was ready to move out in the streets.
I'll tell you one story I heard in the 70s about trying to get comic work is anybody who wants to see Jim Warren, he published Creepy and Eerie and Vampirella. Anybody who wants to see him, he would have him in the office and he would look their stuff over and he would go, nah, we can't hire you here. And if you said why, he pulled a cord and a curtain parted behind him, and on the wall was written, because we're number one.
They were. They did hire the top talents at Creepy and here,
Yeah, it was hard to get into that company.
I can imagine. They were the cream of the crop. I started getting Creepy and Eerie just maybe last year, I had to get number 1 and get number 2, and I have to read things in order because I'm a crazy person. I think I'm up to 12 on each of them, and man, I just sometimes you just flip through a comic, you read it, and you just absorb the art. But Creepy, I just sit there and I like look at each panel like a fine diner, just taking a little of each food. It's so good, and you don't.
When I was a kid, Creepy came out, and man, I wanted that comic. And my mother thought it was too old for me, which it probably was. It's probably a little too mature for me. And I finally convinced her when she wanted to give all of my little golden books away to charity. I said, I'm only going to let you do that if I can buy Creepy.
Yeah, you're saying I'm too old for the children's stuff. That means I'm old enough for the mature stuff.
So she let me start buying Creepy.
Yeah, Savage Sword of Conan and all those, they were on the same rack with the Playboys and stuff. So I was never allowed to look at them, And kids today, they don't know how easy it is. I would have to volunteer to go food shopping with my parents because next door was a cigar shop that sold them. And I'd go in there, there would be comic books. So I'm looking through the comic book, looking through a Playboy. Hope I open up the page at random to a good picture.
Right.
Alcohol ad again. God, and getting all nervous, waiting for the old guy to kick me out of the store.
I remember Playboy put out a collection of Little Annie Fanny, and it was at our drugstore, but they wouldn't let me buy it. And so I asked my dad, could you go in and buy it for me? And he did.
Okay, I thought you could say he was embarrassed.
Harvey Kurtzman, it's Will Elder, it's Frank.
Yeah,
I gotta have this.
Yeah, don't you? These are important people. Yeah.
Yes, I gotta have this book.
Dr. Mask wants to know thoughts on Hunt the Ninja Bear.
I don't know. Yeah,
100 pages. It's awesome.
They keep saying they want me to write a sequel. Those guys are, they're an amazing publisher. They're not getting a whole lot of notice. I think they're doing well sales wise and everything else, but they put out a lot of money to produce really high quality stuff. I mean, Hunter Ninja Bear was like over 300 pages long.
Right. And
it was never a monthly comic. They just had me write the whole damn thing all at once.
That's a big risk.
It's an enormous risk.
Yeah.
But they're real into it. And they got oh man, I wish I could. Star Rider. They got a new thing out. Star Rider. Tony Bedard and Scott McDaniel.
Oh, that's a great team.
Oh yeah. Tony's amazing, and obviously I love Scott McDaniel. So, but yeah, I mean they're real serious about getting into this medium in a big way, and I think they'll do it because they've got great ideas. I mean, Hunter Ninja Bear was their concept, and it was such a crazy idea. I had to work on it. It is nuts. The idea is nuts. All the best comics ideas are nuts.
I couldn't think of anybody else to write that but you. That's a Chuck Dixon idea.
Well, they instilled an extraordinary amount of trust in me because they had a rather detailed treatment for it. And they showed it to me, and they say, well, we want to do this in 6 issues. I'm like, you can't do this in 6 issues. This needs 12 issues. And they didn't blink an eye. And if the issue ran to 30 pages, they didn't care.
Oh, wow. So, that's great. Yeah.
It was like total freedom. It's like this whole new world of where you've got this, I've got all these people, Phenom and Richard Meyer and Graham and Eric July, and they've all got faith in me, and if I know that my publisher has faith in me, I can do anything. Yeah. I do my best work if I know. Because you're not sitting there second guessing yourself.
Oh, yeah, that's speaking of which, you got a Alpha course coming out, and Eric just said it's coming out sooner than you think. In
fact, we're making arrangements. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna fly out there and sign a whole bunch of them.
Oh, cool.
And they're gonna do a video of that, all that.
That is awesome. Yeah. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Eric July has a comic called Isom, and it was a phenomenal success. And he's expanding his Ripperverse, as he calls it, and hired Chuck to do Alpha Corps. It's like their super police force, right?
Yeah. It's like a police procedural superhero thing. And then Joe Bennett, who drew it, we're working now on a project of our own. We created a character for the Ripperverse. And Eric's given us a very generous, we own half of it.
Cool.
It's the best participation deal I've ever gotten. Wow. And then I'm actually working on a third project for him, which I just finished last week. So, and these are all graphic novels. These are all 90 to 100 pages. So,
that is cool. A lot of comments on Conan. People saying that oh, I just lost a comment because I'm a silly person. But another philosophical thing that Conan said that I quoted was the uncivilized man is more polite than the civilized man. The civilized man knows that he could be rude and know that he's not going to get punched in the face.
Yeah. Also, he talks about how barbarism is the natural state of man. Civilization is a construct, which it is.
Obviously. Oh, people don't want to hear. I actually argued with a college professor when they were talking about like the noble savage, and I said, "Are you kidding me? Primitive people were in a constant state of PSTD. They constant survival. You live under survival conditions your whole life and tell me you're not disturbed." And he's like, "You're wrong." I'm like, "How am I wrong?"
No. I mean, you're absolutely stressed. I mean, every day is different and not in a good way.
Yeah.
I always say that, women are the key to civilization. Because if it wasn't for women, we'd all just still be following the buffalo herd.
Yeah.
It was a woman who said, "That's it. I'm not moving." The guy came back from the hunt and said, "Look, the herd's moving. Pack up the tent, pack up the pot and kid, and we're going." And the woman said, "No.
I just shrunk this cave.
We're staying here, and we're gonna figure out how to eat here, and not far. Well, how do we do that? We're gonna instead of gathering, we're gonna plant the stuff. And a woman invented it because they did it in rows.
My only counter argument is in college I had 4. It was me and 3 of the male roommates, and when one left, I got this girl Jessie to come live with us. I was like, she's going to civilize us because we're walking around in our underwear, plates and dishes. She was the most disgusting human being I've ever met in my life. To the point where we're like, I don't care how good looking you are, Jessie. You got to clean up or get out of this house.
Oh, that's
Don. He's saying hello. Absolutely. I might as well mention Don has a launching tomorrow with his comic, Mission Omega Mission,
cool.
on my comic. Yep, a lot of people saying they can't wait for your comics. This is all very exciting. Yeah, it is. I tell the story all the time. I guess I'll repeat it again. I was done with comics in 2015. And I remember looking at my wife like, what do I do? Like I felt like I was cutting off a limb,
Right.
Just imagine like I guess is the only comparison I could think of, like a football player all of a sudden gets crippled. You know what I mean? Like football's my whole life, comics were my whole life. What am I going to do now? Paint models? What am I going to stamp collect?
Right.
And I discovered independent comics, and I didn't know. And there's now look, I'm surrounded by comics everywhere. It never ends. It is a constant state of PSTD. Yeah, there you go. We got it. Let's lower it down there, Chuck. we were getting too highfalutin talking about philosophy of Conan. Oh, you mentioned something a long time ago, and I always wanted to ask you. I just reminded myself. You do paint Civil War miniatures, right?
Well, currently I'm painting Roman Legion, like late Republic Roman Legion. I was painting. I painted a whole bunch of medieval knights, like from the Crusader period.
Cool.
And then a manufacturer brought out a whole bunch of sets of Muslims, so I painted a whole bunch of them. So I got a Crusader thing going.
Yeah, well, you got to have a fight.
I was having the English and the French knights, and then they brought these Muslim figures. I thought, okay, well, let's go to the Crusades.
Yeah, let's go reconquer the Holy Land. Yeah.
I've done it since I was a kid, and it's just like something I do.
Do you like miniature war game or anything, or you just?
No, I don't do any of that. My youngest son does a lot of that, but
really?
I don't do any of that.
What is paint him. Like Warhammer or anything like that?
He does some Warhammer. He does Star Wars Legion. He 3D prints, building models, and I mean, he just goes nuts.
Yeah, I moved out here, and like the new group of guys that I met, they're all into Warhammer, but I want to keep my house. Warhammer was expensive.
I met a guy years ago, and he painted. His thing was North Africa, the World War II in North Africa, and he painted all this stuff. And I said to him, and it was just extensive collection, hundreds of tanks, and he did wargaming. And I said, well, did you ever think of Napoleonics? And he said, that way lies madness. And
Oh, really?
I think Warhammer is the same way. I mean, you got to live Warhammer.
Yeah. My same college roommates, they were all into Warhammer, and that they woke up, they were painting miniatures. They worked. They didn't go to college. They had jobs, so they would go to work, come home, paint miniatures, have a battle till the wee hours of the morning, paint miniatures. And I was like, I can't do this. Yeah. It's funny that you said Napoleonics. I have a miniatures game of Napoleonic ships called Sails of Glory.
Okay.
And you could be the English, you could be the French, there's pirate ships. And out of all the miniature war gamers that I play, that is the most complicated.
Because, I would imagine, yeah.
So yes, he's right when he says they had lives madness. Like, because Warhammer, you just need a little bit of a ruler, and you could do this templates for the bomb. But this, you have this cards that do the wind and the breeze. Then you have to adjust your sails like every time you move. If it's that complicated, I feel like I should be sailing rather than playing a game. But
yeah, it's like when Steve Epting and I did El Cazador, we did so much reading because we knew if nautical aficionados are looking at this comic, they're going to pick us apart. I mean, we had books on knots.
Yeah,
there was so much to learn just to write the comic.
Yeah, I would love to see a second series of El Cazador. That was a great comic. It was a comic flat out pirates, no magic, no superheroes. It was just pirates. It was
well. Joe Bennett and I are talking about doing a pirate thing that would be straight up pirates because he really wants to do it, and that guy does the homework. He's got a Revolutionary War comic, like an early American history comic coming out. It's just mind blowing.
Oh, really?
The level of accuracy is crazy. So he asked me, he says, you ever want to do a pirate thing with me? I'm like, yes, sign me up. I already got the story. So
that is awesome.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, 3 weeks ago, the Chuck Dixon $20 went to Blue Coats. And it's fast to find all of these amazing comics from other countries, and here in America, the big comic they can't sell anything when people are dying for comics. Now I'm looking to Europe, for big comics. It's
and the thing is, I mean, I was complaining on Facebook this week that they reprinted Dan Panosian's John Tiffany here in the United States, and it was originally done for a European publisher. And when they printed it here, they shrunk it down to standard comic book size from European album size, and completely ruined it. And it's like, just so you can bag it. It's just so stupid. And a retailer was complaining about this, and I said, well, this is one of the reasons that if you look at the bestseller list of graphic novels, none of them are in comic shops. They're all book trade, and they're all whatever size you can imagine. They're small, they're big, whatever.
Yeah.
But we're stuck in this format, this silly format.
I'm a product of habit, a creature of habit, I guess is the word. Like I get my floppy comics. I like my floppy comics. I bag and board them and everything. But I'm starting to change my mind, like towards the European model, where one writer, one artist will take their time and give the best possible work in an oversized edition where you could really appreciate it. And then when you get it maybe you only see once a year, but man, it's like 180 pages, 200 pages of beautiful storytelling with wonderful art. So
right.
Maybe that's the future,
I would hope.
I could see guys crowdfunding that like once a year, twice a year, like not just a floppy, but a work of art.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, when we decided to do My Sister Suprema, we did it in a larger format.
Yeah.
Because there was no reason not to.
Right. Let me see if you could see. This is a regular comic.
Yeah.
Yours is magazine size.
Yeah, we weren't planning on having it. We weren't thinking about it being in comic shops. We thought we were going to sell this thing direct.
Yeah. Why not cut out the middleman? Cut out the middleman.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. What do they say? Art Tour. Oh, Art Tour Theory. I thought you were mentioning a guy's name. Yeah, Kevin Ryan. This guy, as much as I think I know about comic books, not only he knows a million times more. Just start your own channel, Kevin. You'd be amazing. Dr. Best says he finds painting figures to be very calming. I don't know about you, but my eyes hurt after 20 minutes. I could only do it for a little bit of time.
Yeah, well, I'm not painting the miniatures. I mean, the ones I'm painting now are like 60 millimeter, so they're like 2.5 inches tall. So it's not that bad.
You were talking about you do it Roman legions.
Yeah,
I'm a construction worker, and you know how construction workers, we could bust each other's chops. There was a couple of guys sitting around. Oh, John, hey, you dress up like Spider-Man. You go to conventions. You dress up like Batman. And the guy who's saying this to me, he had a Peyton Manning shirt. It was like after the Super Bowl, and he's like, look at you. You might as well be dressed up as Spider-Man. You know, you're not a football player. You're a big fat blob. You couldn't run 10 steps. Peyton Manning or whatever his name is doesn't know who you are. He wouldn't give you the time of day, and you're wearing your costume, your uniform, and everybody was like laughing at him. And there was one of the guys, the biggest, scariest biker-looking guy covered in tattoos, and he's just sitting there quiet. And then when everybody left, he goes, "Hey, you notice I didn't make fun of you?" I was like, "Yeah." I got a little nervous. He's a big, scary guy. He goes, "Check this out," and he opens up his phone. He's dressed as a full Legionnaire. He's part of a Legionnaire cosplay troupe.
Oh, that's cool.
Once a month. And, since he's a big guy, he's the standard bearer. And he goes, yeah. I got to be there. I was like, oh, my God. We're all nerds.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think Jonathan Winters, the comedian, talked about that because he used to collect toys and stuff like that. And he says, guys that make fun of me. And he says, and there they are wearing a Chicago Cubs hat. Well, you don't play for the team. You're indulging your childish fantasy. I'm indulging mine. It's like, leave me alone.
Yeah, I don't know. The only difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. I'm buying more expensive comics that I couldn't afford as a kid.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. I mean, now I can afford to get any toy soldier I want, so I get it.
Yeah, I remember as a kid, a comic book store opened up by me for the first time ever. I was like, oh my God, a store that sells just comic books. Like I wanted to go there every day after school, and they had Amazing Fantasy 15, X-Men #1, and Fantastic Four #1 right next to it, $60 a piece.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, who would ever spend $60 on a comic book?
I remember early 70s going to cons, and I was really fascinated with EC War comics, Frontline Combat and Twisted Tales, but they were $5 a piece. I was like, I'm not buying it. I'm not spending $5 on a comic.
$5.
I don't care that it's 20 years old. I'm not buying it.
Yeah, $20 for a comic book. And it's funny because I remember my mom would ask, "How much did you pay for that?" Like when I just bought like some back issue or something. I'm like, "Oh yeah, $4." Meanwhile, I spent like $75 for some expensive Jack Kirby comic. Oh, okay, $4. I was just telling this story a couple of days ago. I bought a collection from some family, and I was broke at the time. I just started teaching. I was working for that guy that I just told you the story about. And the Board of Education, you don't get paid for 2 months, but they messed up. So I hadn't gotten paid in 3 months, and I was using my savings. And I was like, "Hey, Dad, can I get $20 for gas?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah, okay." He didn't know where I was going, so I borrowed $20 for gas, and I drove my little brother to this house because I had offered this girl $1,000 for this collection. It was literally all I had, and it was almost everything Marvel put out from like Fantastic Four #10 to like almost 1975 in near mint condition. Wow. So I come back with these comics boxes, and my father's on the phone. You remember the old phones? Dads would talk like this and shout, "Hey, Frank!" He's talking to his brother. "Frank, my asshole son just borrowed money for gas to buy comic books with the last bit of dollars that he had in the bank, and he hasn't even got paid from work. My son's an effing idiot." And then I pulled out Iron Man #1. I was like, "Dad, this comic is worth $1,000, and I don't even know how many. There's 6 more boxes and stuff like this." "Frank, my son just bought a collection of Fortune and comics." I had my buddy come over who ran a comic store. He was just like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Get these comics off the table, bag and board them right now." He's like, "Oh my," he was so nervous, and that became like the backbone of my collection.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So great. And then I went to the comic store, the other comic store, and was bragging. I was showing him pictures, and he was like, "Get out of my store. I never want to see you again."
So you ran into that Holy Grail collection everybody dreams
it
about.
happened a few times.
Man.
If I could indulge me with another story, I was in the same comic store where the guy was kind of nasty to people, and this kid comes in with a brown bag of comics. He goes, "Hey, you want to buy some comics?" And he goes, "I sell the comics here, kid. I sell the comics. You want to pay the rent, that you can sell whatever comics you want, but I sell the comics, so get out of my store." Something told me that little intuition in my head. I said, I want to go see what that kid has. He walks out. So I was like, "What do you got?" He opened up. He had a bunch of garbage. Daredevil #1 in like glossy white edition. I was like, "How much?" He was like, $60 for the whole bag. I was like, "You got it." And I remember showing my friend Mark. He just was like, I don't even want to touch this. He was like, twice, lightning struck twice,
I mean, I went to a garage sale a couple of years ago with my son, and a number of years ago, he wasn't driving, and I was taking the garage sale. He was buying Legos, and this guy's got all these long boxes with comics, and they're all 90s, bagged and boarded, mint condition. It's all comics nobody wants, nobody cares about. And he had, buyer, he had price guide prices on them, out of sight. I wasn't interested in any of it. Then he had like a washing machine box with just comics thrown in it. Not bagged, not board, just thrown in. I'm going through this thing. I come up with a nearly complete set of Weird War.
Oh, my God.
So I'm like, hell, this completes my collection, and I can sell it. I sold it's like $600 to $800 selling these comics that he had no use for. And it's like, man, you don't understand what's collectible.
Yeah. There's a guy around the block from me. I'm like whispering like he could hear me.
He's at your window right now.
I know. He's just an old guy, and he's like, I've been running comic book stores my whole life. So it's like, I got the Weird War Tales with the Creature Commandos for like $10 in like I'm looking to see if it's a reprint because it's in such good conditions. Wow. And I'm like, and I'm looking at them and I'm giving them a chance to like up the price because I don't want to rip anybody off. It's like, nah, this is just my hobby. I'd be sitting at home doing. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm a fan for life. He also gave me a full run of the Nom 1 to 40 for $1 each. Great. Sorry, Chuck, but I missed the Nom when it came out. I wasn't interested in war comics at the time.
Okay.
Speaking of war comics, if Chuck is a fan of war comics, was he into DC writers such as Bob Kinnear and Bob Haney?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for my money, early '70s DC war comics just don't get any better than that. I mean, they were groundbreaking in the storytelling. They were mature. I mean, they kind of grew those characters up a bit in the early '70s. I guess because of the Vietnam War. And the big readership for those comics was soldiers, guys serving overseas. And those are some amazing comics, some of the best American comics ever produced.
I heard you say that before. And again, when I was a kid, I just wanted superhero comics. Right. And I didn't get signed. Like I didn't get as much as I love Star Wars. I wasn't interested in the Star Wars comics. I just wanted superheroes. And so I missed out on all of that. Yeah. And I've been picking up a lot of the DC war comics. I gotta agree. It's almost like DC was two companies. It was like a schizophrenic company because like Wonder Woman at the time, it was kind of goofy and silly, and then you had Michael Fleischer writing Jonah Hex, which was not for little kids. It was all ages, but it was not for little kids. It was really, really good storytelling. And those war comics were really good.
Well, that was true even in the 50s. I mean, DC comics in the 50s they're stupid. And they're stupid because the editors, their philosophy was, if you're over 10 years old reading these, you're a moron. And so
lifelong moron here.
But then you had the war comics, and they're all edited by Whitney Ellsworth, who obviously had a much higher opinion of his readership than Mort Weisinger and the other editors, because the DC war comics in the 50s they're rather maturely written. I mean, there's so much they can deal with the comics code, but they do a really good job. They're not stupid. They're not stupid stories. And that seemed to be true throughout because, in the 70s, DC comics sort of fell into a, bad period where the stuff just wasn't good. It was subpar. And here the war comics and the Western comics are awesome.
Right.
and
Yeah.
selling well. I mean, quality sells, or well, it did then.
Yeah. Well, we wouldn't know that. There's not too much quality in the mainstream. You know,
No,
you,
no.
you got to go independent to get the quality.
Right.
Since you brought it up, you made me think. You saying these were all Code Authority comics, and they're
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't realize this until maybe 6-7 months ago. I think like as we broke away from the comics code, comics got worse instead of better. Like I'm starting to realize that the Comics Code Authority wasn't such a handicap as in the 80s, I was like, this is censorship,
Right.
But look at all the great comics that were under censorship, if that's what you want to call it. I don't know. What do you
had to work within certain guidelines, but okay, these are the rules. This is what I got to do. But you could do, it's like there was censorship in Hollywood movies in 30s and 40s, but they got away with a lot of innuendo, and they were forced to think more creatively. I remember when they started saying, well, we're going to start having non-code books. We're going to have mature books, and writers saying, oh, I can finally use 4-letter words. It's going to make my writing better. It's like, well, if that's what you need to make your writing better, maybe you weren't that good to begin with. If you can't get ideas across without, getting profane. And I'm all for mature comics. I mean, I love the undergrounds and all that stuff. But if you're writing for kids, you need guidelines.
Yeah, I agree. Know your audience. Who you aiming for? I'm a big fan of the all ages comic. I think it's a talent. It's an art to make something that little kids would enjoy. And then when I go back as an adult and reread some of these comics, I get other layers that I didn't notice before. Subtleties, sometimes a little bit of like suggestiveness in the body language that I never picked up, especially with Steranko. There was a couple of Steranko things. I was like, oh, close up of a gun in the holster over there. Nick goes to kiss Valentina, and I didn't get that as a kid.
Originally, the phone was off the hook. They made him redraw it, put the phone back on the hook.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, kids are a tough audience. They always, kids they have a short attention span. No, they don't. No, they don't.
No.
They have a really long attention span. If they like something, they're going to keep being involved with it. I mean, kids can spend an hour on the floor with a magnifying glass looking at ants.
Right.
So
a kid watches the same cartoon 500 times.
Exactly.
How many times do kids watch Aladdin?
And so to appeal to a kid, you got to have a solid story structure. You got to have stuff happening. You got to make them wonder what's going to happen next. You got to keep that story moving. And that's a great basis for adults. And then you can add all kinds of layers of second meanings and everything else. I mean, I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. I'm past middle age. And I still love reading Carl Barks because Carl Barks told a hell of a story. And there's a lot of jokes in there I wouldn't have got as a kid that I get now.
Yeah.
Same for John Stanley on Little Lulu. I mean, this stuff was sophisticated stuff, but it was written for kids. But it was written by guys who knew that kids weren't stupid. And this work was highly successful. Sold into millions every month because kids recognized quality.
And how many times does a kid? I don't know about you, but I read the same comic over and over and over again to the I could still repeat panels from when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I think adults have the short attention span.
Absolutely.
If I turn on a Netflix movie and it doesn't grab me within 4 minutes, I'm out of there. I'm going to the next. Let's watch something else.
That's not short attention span. That's like I mean, I know as a writer, there's tells. And it's like, oh, okay, here's where we're going. I'm not watching any more of this. and I think we all understand the language of film, and we can all spot these things, even if we're not articulating it in our head. It's just like, oh, here's the eye roll. Here's the scene. Okay, all right, this is what this is going to be like. I'm out. That's why I tell people, that want to get into writing is watch old movies. Watch movies from the 30s and 40s. The way they set things up. And everything else, so you didn't realize things were being set up. Most old movies were up off the blocks within 5 minutes. Stories set up, characters set up. We already liked them. We're already engaged, and then you move on with the story.
Right.
They don't seem to know how to do that anymore.
Well, look at the Outer Limits or Twilight Zone. You know what I mean? you're like, oh, okay, this is going on in 5 minutes, and then this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good. Oh, I hate this one. I don't like. Within 5 minutes, you knew. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a high concept. I either like this one or I don't like this one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. You brought up. I always wanted to ask you because I'm always listening in my car, but now I guess I could. I've been getting back into Western movies. As a kid, I watched Westerns as a child with my dad. It was like the thing we did after Sunday. We came home from church. Me and my dad would watch Marx Brothers or the Bowery Boys, and then a Western. And then it was dinner time. The whole family would get together. So now I'm getting nostalgic for that. So give me some good Westerns to watch.
Any Jimmy Stewart movie directed by Anthony Mann from the 50s. These are like when they started doing what they called the adult Westerns. In other words, Westerns were for kids mostly up to that point.
Cowboy.
Yeah, and now what happened was you had guys coming back from World War II. And when they left for World War II, they loved Westerns. They were young guys, or teenagers. They were young guys. They loved Westerns. When they come back from World War II, they want Westerns. They don't want the same kind of Western.
Right. They've seen
a lot. They want something that reflects their experiences. And so they grow the Westerns up. And I think the best example in the 50s is Anthony Mann and Jimmy Stewart Westerns. And then, things like The Searchers. But there's a whole lot of really good Westerns in the 50s. Randolph Scott's later films, his last 7 movies are just freaking amazing.
Yeah.
Because they're so spare. There's all these surprises in it. The thing that people don't understand about Westerns is there's a lot of nuance there. It all seems like, it just ends with a big gunfight. Yeah, it does. It all ends with a big gunfight. Well, but how they got there, that was the story.
Well, you take away the big gunfight and you turn it into laser beams and super strength. I think the Western and superheroes are. I don't think it's any coincidence that they're both American, phenomenons, I guess, for lack of a better term. And I don't think any other country could have produced them because the Western is about rugged individuality. And,
right.
And that's what America was supposed to be founded on. And the superhero is, I'm going to solve this problem with my own prowess and might,
Right. I mean, the big showdown, that's, comes from the Western, but it's like every movie now has a big showdown.
And I just think it's so funny that the Italians and the French are making comic books with Westerns, and the Americans, we're like toning down the violence and the struggle, and it's people sitting there talking about lattes and hot dogs and in a diner in American superhero comic books. If you read the mainstream stuff,
Well, I mean, yeah, they just concentrate on superheroes, and they didn't know where to go with them. And they chased away everybody who was good at working on them, and brought in a bunch of people who had contempt for superhero genre.
Yeah,
and, they're basically just projecting themselves in these stories, and they're just lousy writers.
The lousy writers, they don't care about it, and I've been using this word a lot, and I'm kind of getting sick of it. But they're tourists; they're just coming through, right? Yeah, and they have no intention. I think it was you who said that when you.
Yeah, I think I coined that. I think I coined the tourist thing to name these people.
But you also said back when you were breaking into comics, you did it because this was your career. This is what you wanted to do.
Yep. There was no looking back. This wasn't a stepping stone to writing movies or TV or writing novels. This was the be all end all. This was the alpha and omega. I just want to write comic books. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to work in comics. I didn't care about anything else.
Oh man.
And that's not where we are now with these creators.
Yeah, and you're one of the most I can't even say this word, prolific comic book writers of all time. I know there's a guy from Dell that has like a world record. I can't think of his name.
Oh, I beat him.
Oh, you did?
Oh yeah, I beat him for pages. Yeah.
Oh,
I can't beat him for stories because they wrote 8-page, 10-page stories. I can't beat him, but I beat him for pages. Yeah, I'm well over
So you're number one. There we go. Chuck Dixon's number one.
Oh yeah, I beat them all. Paul S. Newman, I think, is the guy you're talking.
Yes,
about.
That's the name I was thinking of. I couldn't think
Paul
of
S. Newman, Gaylord Dubois, Robert Kanigher, Gardner Fox, Stan Lee. I beat them all. I think I'm like 49,000 pages of comics.
Wow, that is so cool. How many unpublished pages that you know?
Oh God, there's probably hundreds of unpublished pages. Hundreds.
You would say last time you were on that you have like books with you and Jim Aparo, that inventory issues that never saw the light of day.
Oh yeah, yeah. After he retired, they would, you know, every once in a while they'd have me write a script for him for an inventory issue, but they never published them.
What is DC doing? This is money sitting in a box someplace. Release this.
You know, I'm not the only creator. I mean, there's probably enough for like 6 omnibuses of unpublished stuff.
Oh my god! Makes my soul hurt to think about this.
And at Marvel, I mean, Don Daly left when they fired him. He was the Punisher editor. I heard there was like hundreds of thousands of dollars in inventory, finished projects in his drawers with the Punisher. It's like, why not publish them? Publish them in black and white. Just throw them out there. It's money.
Right. What happens to that stuff? Do you think it's even, because the buildings moved? Do you think that stuff even exists anymore?
Well, you would hope they took film of it. I mean, I know the Punisher graphic novel that Gary Quapis and I did. I mean, it was lettered. It was getting ready to be colored. I know they shot it to be colored. Whether or not they still have, you would hope they had copies of it. I mean, they sent all of his originals back to him. He's got all the originals, but, you know, and that's back when they lettered on the page. So, you know, he's got the complete graphic novel, but
that's the one you said, it's Frank Castle in the Savage Land with
Dinosaurs.
Why is that not published?
I know.
Don't you want? Oh, I'm drooling thinking about this comic. Don't you want that as a kid? You know?
Yeah, he goes undercover with Hydra and ends up in the Savage Land.
Tell me he somehow ends up riding a T-Rex or something like that with a machine gun.
He's on some kind of critter because, you know, he gets uncovered by Hydra and they like try to kill him. And of course they fail and they leave him out in the wilderness and he runs into this, you know, tribe of, you know, cavemen, Neanderthals, proto-humans, whatever you want to call it. And of course, you know, he challenges the biggest one to a fight, ends up as their war chief. And then they go back to the Hydra base and attack it with, you know, Tyrannosauruses and Velociraptors. And all that. So,
this is awesome.
Yeah.
That's what comic books are.
Yeah.
You know, the budget is limited by your imagination.
Well, artists hate it when you say that, but yeah, it's true. You can have 1,000 people. And oh, no, please don't make me.
Yeah, only George Perez was like, I'll do that. I'll take that.
Yeah. I remember once an artist complained to me because I had I wrote a story in Skywolf. It was Tom Lyle, and the Chinese army invades. They come across the North Korean border, invade Korea, attack the Marines at the Chosen Reservoir, and I have Skywolf in the middle of it. And I have, you know, the Chinese army invades, you know, big panel. And Tom's like, you made me draw all those soldiers. And it's like, yeah, you just need to lower your angle a little. Now, I didn't ask you to draw all of them.
Draw the entire Chinese army, please.
Yeah, you draw the front row and you just sort of indicate, you know, you draw a few hats. Just sort of indicate.
Was it you? I forget who was told the artist to draw 1,000 sharks, but it was just like just like a jumps in the water. There's 1,000, and he literally drew 1,000 sharks.
It wasn't me. No.
Oh, wasn't you? Okay.
No. I would never. I mean, you know, I always ask artists. Graham Nolan hated drawing helicopters, and Rodolfo DiMaggio asked to draw helicopters. So, you know,
and nobody likes horses, right? Nobody likes to draw horses. That's always the thing.
You know, some guys are so damn good at it, and then some guys, they won't. I had a really good artist that I wanted to do a Western with, and he says, I hate drawing horses. I said, I cannot believe you're so good that you. He says, no, my horses don't look right. And I'm like, wow.
They must be their own worst critic. I've been holding off on this question. I didn't know if I should ask you or not. I didn't want, because we've been having so much fun. But what are your thoughts on what DC's? I want to amend this to, what do you think? Like this Tim Sheridan has, the way he's promoting Alan Scott.
First of all, he's upset because it isn't selling as well as he thinks, and apparently seems to think it's because of homophobia. I think it's because nobody really gives a crap about the Golden Age Green Lantern to begin with, straight or gay. Nobody cares about that character. Why?
Where is it? Where is it? I can't even point to it. Right here. Where is it? I got the Alan Scott Green Lantern right there. I like Alan Scott. I'm the one fan of Alan Scott.
Well, yeah, but he was never going to break any sales records with Alan Scott, and then they make him gay to try to make him interesting because they think that makes the character interesting. It takes a lot more than that to make the character interesting.
Right.
And then the other thing is that everybody says, and it's true, create your own damn gay character. Why you got to piggyback on a character that already exists? And it's pretty
That's
pathetic.
not yours.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. I said something about it on Facebook. Why would you basically, beg readers to buy your book over some straw man controversy you invented? And then they're like, well, that's what Eric July does. No, that's not what he doesn't tell you to buy his book because he's a controversial figure. He just defends himself from people that say horrible things about it.
I've never seen the insanity like what Eric July is.
I don't get it. I mean,
it's almost like Monty Python-esque the way it's happening to him.
I've had people come after me because I'm now associated with him. I thought they had learned to leave me alone. And I got guys coming after me, and it's from the left and the right. I had a guy call me a communist. You're a communist, just like Eric July. And I'm like, wow.
You of all people.
How is he a communist? Yeah, but how? And it's like, well, his politics. I don't know anything about Eric's politics. I don't ask people who want to work with me in comics about their politics. He doesn't ask me about mine because we're not doing political books. We're doing comic books. And they have to there's a bunch of people who has a special loathing for him, and I don't get it.
Yeah, it's to the point like I'm wondering if there's like a I hate to say it, but like fans like David Chapman to John Lennon. It's like, Eric, watch yourself. These people are getting creepy weird.
Yeah, I mean, apparently they tried to find his warehouse.
Yeah,
and stuff like that
over a guy making a comic. Just don't buy the comic. Don't put fuel in the fire and the fire goes out. That you want to stop him, ignore him.
Well, I mean, I think they're pissed because he's successful.
Right. Yeah. Well,
and I'm here. Well, that success isn't real. I'm like, the money's not real. I mean, the guy's paid me.
Yeah.
He pays me right away.
Check that money. It might be illusionary. It might.
Yeah. It's like, oh wow. I just thought I got a check.
You're gonna look at it again. It's gonna be paper with Ruth Buzzy's face on it. What happened?
Davy Crockett on the 50. Wait a minute. No, I really, the only thing I can think of is it's a racial thing. That he's a black conservative, and they just can't have it.
Black conservatives seem to they get it from everybody.
They draw the fire, man.
Yeah, they do. They do.
But he won't back down. And they're like, oh, well, he's using this controversy to create sales. He had sales before the controversy.
Right. Yeah. The controversy came after this. The controversy is because of the sales.
Now, is the controversy helping him promote himself? Of course.
Yeah.
But but he's not. He doesn't need it. He didn't need it.
But he's handling it very well. If anybody can handle it, he's lassoing it in and monetizing your haters.
Yeah.
But
he's not out there begging you to buy it because
no. I had him on my channel too. He was a great guy. I'm nobody. He was funny. We were laughing and joking. My goal was, I said, I'm going to make Eric July. I've never seen him laugh. So I'm going to make Eric July laugh. And I had him clapping and laughing and wiping his eye. It was great. So what you said about Tim Sheridan? Yeah, I didn't catch this until your boy Zach said it on his channel. The comic's already been solicited. He knows what the sales are.
That's the problem. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
He should have been out there 3 months ago when the bookstores were ordering books.
It's too late now. Does he think?
So either he doesn't know the business.
No, he doesn't.
Or he's preparing the excuse.
I mean, they're not going to go back to press. And I've seen sales numbers on DC Books, and it's like, oh my God, why did you even bother going to press?
Oh, really?
I mean, just
they don't sell the numbers anymore.
Horrifying numbers. I mean, numbers I couldn't even imagine. And then you look at numbers that that Graham Nolan is doing, that Billy Tucci does, and forget about the numbers Eric does. Eric does serious numbers.
Yeah.
He's doing trades that sell more than the vast majority of monthly comics.
Yeah. I also had to laugh that Mr. Sheridan had a picture with the stuff, and he had a Green Lantern, a Hal Jordan lantern. He had a Hal Jordan ring on, and then he says, "Join the Corps," and I'm just like, Alan Scott's not part of the Green Lantern Corps. That's the wrong. I'm looking at it as a comic book guy, going, "What is? You don't know what you're talking about."
No.
So I asked him politely again. I try to be in good faith. So I said, "Why don't you come on my show and we'll talk about Green Lantern, and I said, are you going to bring back Obsidian? Obsidian was Green Lantern's son, who was the first openly gay DC character and beloved by the fans. He came out in the 80s when I was a teen. I don't remember anybody getting pitchforks out and yelling and screaming. We were just like, cool costume. They did it the right way. They explored the character. He was a cipher, who wasn't developed. And I had no problems with that. I don't like when there's an established way of, like, Bobby Drake all of a sudden, to me, that's like divine intervention, just switched his brain or whatever. So he blocked me. That was his response. I'm now blocked. Oh, well.
Well, it's like when they do this, when they regender or race swap or make them gay or bi or asexual or whatever, and then it's in your face, you don't like this. Well, I remember I was reading X-Men in the 80s, and Storm becomes leader of the X-Men. Black Woman becomes leader of the X-Men. And I'm like, cool. Storm's a cool character. That makes sense. She'll be a great leader of the X-Men. Yeah. And it wasn't like, you have to like this or you're a racist.
Right. Yeah.
It made sense for the story. I mean, who didn't like Storm?
Right. She was a great leader. It made sense. It was like,
it's like, thank God somebody mature is running this outfit now.
Yeah, well, Cyclops had his own problems at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I always thought Cyclops was a big crybaby anyway. All the original X-Men.
And I remember at the time when Kitty Pryde joined the group, it was like, oh, she's Jewish.
Right.
And I remember I sat back for a second. I was taken back, not that she was Jewish, but the fact that, they never really mentioned religion before. It would make sense that one, and then it that was what I liked about the X-Men. I was like, oh, Kurt Wagner is a German Catholic, know, and then Peter Rasputin, he's an atheist from the Soviet Union. Right. And I remember that caused a debate in that issue where they went to Dante's Inferno, and Colossus goes, I can't believe you people believe in the existence of this place. Right. And then Kurt gives a response. He's like, well, this is part of our belief, and people send themselves. I remember reading this as a kid, and it was like, yeah, comics were always political. Yeah, they kind of always were. Like, yeah, you always say it was.
There's a difference between dealing with a political issue and telling you what to think about.
Right. That's what I was getting. This was nuanced between two characters. It was organic. It made sense. It promoted the discussion. Like, I kind of had a little bit more respect for Colossus at the time because I was a Roman Catholic kid, Irish, Italian, you know what I mean? So, of course, like, people don't believe this. Like, it made me really think that the world was a larger place. To me, it was political in an intelligent, thought-provoking way. It wasn't just like, believe this or you're the bad guy,
Well, I mean, comics aren't going to ignore the real world. I mean, when I was on Robin, we got teenage characters going to a public high school, and kids in public high school were dealing with issues I never dealt with in high school. Drugs, guns, teen pregnancy, date rape, all the stuff that just, didn't happen. And I said to Denny O'Neil, we have to deal with it. Otherwise, we look like Archie comics. We'll look like we're ignoring it. Because this is an everyday thing going on with kids, and we're to my mind selling to kids who are in high school, in junior high. And he's like, yeah, he and I are completely opposite sides of the political spectrum, but and he said, as long as the issue isn't the story, if the issue inspires a story, that's good. I said, well, that's the way I roll. And I told him, I said, it's pretty funny coming from the guy who did Green Lantern, Green Arrow, where you dealt with a new political issue every month and told us what to think about
it. What did he say about that?
He was fine with it, man. We got along great. He knew I did not like his relevant comics. He knew I despised them.
I'm the kind of person, I don't believe anything anybody tells me. And even though you said, that Hard Traveling Heroes, which you were just referencing, it sold bad that they had to bring it back. So I went back and I was looking at it. I was like, yeah, not that I doubted you, but I always like to look up the facts. I was like, yeah, they had to change the comic because the sales were plunging.
Oh, yeah, the sales were horrible.
The same with the Steve Englehart Captain America, like the president's a bad guy and America's bad. And, oh, by the way, here's Jack Kirby, Mad Bomb, go! Let's bring back the sales.
Yeah, readers didn't want that stuff. I mean, I remember having a lot of fun twitting Hard Traveling Heroes when we would do Green Lantern, Green Arrow crossovers. And I remember revisiting the town of Desolation. Remember Desolation, where all the people were getting sick from pollution and the mines and everything else. And when we revisited it, Desolation was the lawsuit capital of the United States. Everybody was rich because they had sued the mining company.
Yeah, Abrax said he hates when they take an 80-year history. Yeah, I don't think anybody watching this right now is going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
And somebody said that Alan Scott had the worst costume. That's what I liked about him. Like Al Pratt, the Atom, he had a yellow and brown costume. What a horrible costume, and it was amazing. The original Hawkman mask,
Yeah,
you guys couldn't draw that. What the Wildcat mask?
yeah.
That was terrible, but it was awesome. Well, we've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, and I know your time is precious. In this hour and a half, you could have written 3 or 4 comics.
Come on now.
I know you're quick.
I'm not a machine.
Oh, okay. Chuck, what did you think of Dennis O'Neill's question run?
It was very much Denny's question. Denny loves those kind of flawed heroes with feet of clay. I remember once I got these videotapes of Have Gun Will Travel, 60s Western, and I made copies of them and I brought them into Denny. I said, I know you want these. He goes, have we ever talked about this? I said, no, we didn't have to talk about it. I know you love this TV series because it's so you. And he's like, you're right. I never missed an episode of this. Because Paladin was, he had this like mysterious past, and he was an intellect. He would get into a battle of wits with people as often as get into a battle with guns. And I think that was, Denny O'Neill's question is very much that kind of character.
Yeah, I remember being confused by the character because I was familiar with the with Steve Ditko's version. And I'm like,
right,
is this the same character? So I guess that's why he had to get shot in the head at the beginning to rebirth. But if I could just twist the knife a little bit, I remember the last issue he ended up leaving Hub City in flames because he said, I was just like, oh, the liberal superhero couldn't solve the problems and fled.
Right.
Like, is that what you wanted, Denny?
maybe unconsciously. I mean,
Yeah.
Denny was a New York City liberal, which is a different breed of liberal.
Yes.
Say a liberal from St. Paul. I remember once Denny telling me this was in the early 90s, and he had been mugged for the 3rd time, and and the cops came, and he wanted to tell me this story really bad. He said, the cops come and they interview him. He gives a description, and they're like, yeah, okay, great, but we're never going to catch this guy. And he says, yeah. And he says, the cop says, you should think about getting a gun. And then he said, well, that's not legal. The cop says, you think we care at this point?
I just finally got my pistol permit over here in New York. It took 2 years.
Wow.
I had to jump through incredible hoops. And me being a stupid idiot who can't keep my mouth shut, the detectives called me up and I got to go down. I got to get fingerprinted. And I'm just like, oh, I'd like to get my license for my freedom of speech. Where do I get fingerprinted for that? Every cop is just shut your mouth. You made it this far. Just shut your mouth.
Yeah. Don't push it, buddy.
And then he's filling out the paperwork, and he checked concealed carry. And I'm like, and I don't say anything because I'm like, all right, I'm getting an upgrade over here because I guess they like my sass, out of my gym. And then the second detective goes, oh, not concealed carry. We don't have concealed carry. And I said, well, didn't the Supreme Court say that all licenses are concealed carry now? That that the counties don't have? And again, all the cops like, shut your mouth, And then he says, okay, here's my number. Call me if you get in trouble. And of course, I'm like, well, what do you mean get in trouble? He's like, well, if you get in trouble, call me. You got to let us know first. And I'm like, a speeding ticket? He goes, no, not a speeding ticket. It's like if you get arrested for buying a gun with a bag of cash from somebody. And I said, if I knew a guy that would buy a gun for a bag, would I be here jumping through these hoops? And they're just like, just don't get arrested. I said, because then you can't get your gun. And I said, well, then I'll go to my buddy with the bag of cash. Either way, these cops. I come home. My wife is like, you're gonna have the FBI chasing you. I can't get my mouth.
Yeah. I'm just glad I'm in Florida.
Yeah, I know.
It's like every other week you hear about a home invasion that turned into a gunfight.
Yeah, home invasion, and it was the last time that guy invaded anybody's home.
Exactly.
And there's a crocodile well fed someplace.
We got a sheriff down here, and there was some guy killed a cop, and the cop shot him like 75 times. And at the press conference, they asked the sheriff, why'd they shoot him 75 times? And he goes, well, they ran out of bullets.
Yeah, that's all the ammo he had. Yeah. Like what you said about it, New York liberal. I had Jimmy Palmiotti on here a couple weeks ago, and he's a classic old school New York Democrat liberal. I enjoyed talking to him. What I liked about him, he was talking about cowboys and Western films and growing up in New York, and then going to the opera and seeing a play. And I was saying to my wife after that conversation, I said, this I kind of miss. This is like the old school New York liberals that they were artsy. These guys got into bar fights, but they would go to the opera. That down at Carnegie Hall watching a symphony. Like they could just take the best of both worlds. And you don't really see that. It's like an old breed. They all moved out of New York, and now we got these complainers taking their place.
Yeah, they were pragmatic liberals. They lived in a real world, and as I always say, they earned their opinions.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't learn them. They earned them.
Yeah, I agree with you. He was a pleasure to talk to. What a charming guy. And then Amanda opened the door and waved, and I was like, "Fanboy, gosh!"
Jimmy's cool. I like.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a real good guy. Afterwards, I was just like, "Oh man, what a pleasant guy." But all right, I'm keeping you here. I could talk for an hour. That's my weakness. I'll
come back and we'll talk for another hour then.
Oh, please do. Whenever let's do a buddy show every Friday night. Me and Chuck. You heard it here first. Tune in Friday. Chuck and his buddy John.
We'll have adventures together.
Yeah, we'll have adventures. Well, yeah,
we'll solve crimes.
We'll solve crimes and start a rock band. How's that?
Oh man.
Yeah. So there you go. Last question. What if we did start a rock band? What instrument would you play?
Oh, I can't play anything.
Neither can
I'd be on the triangle. I'd be on the tambourine.
Yeah, I know. I'd take a mic and scream just because I could talk. But thanks a lot. Anything? The links in the description for all of Chuck's. You got Arctunes going. You got Spin Rack. You got the new Conan novel. Alpha Core is coming out soon. Man, you're a busy guy.
Yep, that's why I like it.
Yeah, just the way you like it. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'll see you next time. And yes, please do come back. I could talk to you forever. You're it's like a comedy show. We could just laugh all night long.
We gotta do it again.
I've been holding in this cough for an hour and a half. All right, good night, everybody. Thank you, Chuck.